take the opportunity tonight to allow ourselves just to get to know a little bit more deeply the experience that we have as we begin to enter into our meditation practice. What I mean by that is, if we have a technique that we're working with, a focal point, a direction for our experience of mind, then each time it wants to wander away from that key point, for instance, comfort, each time it wanders away from that, ideally we want to take this time to recognize the fact that it isn't, in fact, doing that, wandering away, but then be very, very clear as to how to bring it back to a place of quiet, a place of space, which is being induced by the experience of comfort, specifically manifesting within your physical body. And that is always the entry point for a meditation practice, no matter what. If you've been practicing for 100 years or 3, it's always the exact same. Because we simply follow the natural progression that the systems that the human being has in order to experience itself. So when we sit, we always find comfort first. But that experience of comfort then allows every other moment spent within your meditation practice and every other rung of observation within the developing focus and concentration of the meditation to have an anchor or resting place. And we've been talking about it over the year as a experience, but also contemplative concept of embodiment. So the question now to you is, how then do I embody this experience of meditation, of space of mind, of clarity of emotion in such a way that I can authentically say, yes, I experience a meditative experience through this one doorway. And if we're successful at just this simple experience of comfort, then you would attain a depth of meditation already, and then you'll know exactly what I mean. If you're sort of sitting in your meditation and there's a confusion or a cloudiness as to what it is that you're looking for, well, that's true. That's authentic. And that is the piece that we were wanting to address more consciously and more clearly, is that dialogue that has been created, that we were really talking about last week, and the decisions that we make around that dialogue. So the decisions that we make are going to be in supportive of that mental dialogue as we're sitting with the eyes closed, or it's going to aid in the constructive development of that dialogue. So whether it needs to become more quiet, or maybe even the language just shifting slightly and giving more room for this conscious piece of who we are to simply be comfortable with ourselves in every aspect, whether that be in the experience of your physical body, or whether that be in a manifestation coming from the mind as a thought, the mind as an emotion, the mind as a personality, the mind as a past, the mind as a future, and also the mind as a present, right? So we want to educate our conscious level of being to such a point where we can hold space. So we hold space for others often. When we come into this room, there's a space that's held. So we, in a sense, want to be that conscious, that we want to hold space for this experience that we have called mind in order to find its resting place. Does that make sense? We're going to become incredibly conscious of that process, allowing it to come up, watching what it does, making the decision, choosing that pathway, and just letting it all settle. And then even 1 minute later, it might manifest again. And we're going to just on repeat again and again and again and see if we can find the meditative experience through the avenue of comfort. If in fact your meditation has been developing and you've moved on to other stages of the meditation, then feel free just to go to the natural resting place of your meditative practice. Let's begin by closing the eyes. With that simple piece of instruction, comfort, as our focal point, allow yourself to work with that instruction solely. So that we begin to eliminate some of the aerobic, like exercise the mind goes into when it finally gets an opportunity just to simply relax. We want to be able to recognize the body's natural tendency to be able to promote a meditative state void of the influence from the mind. So this is a meditative practice from the perspective of your physical body. engaging directly with this sensation coming from your physical body, which expresses and speaks to a meditative state. So there's no overthinking which is necessary. It is a feeling, a sensation. Rests beside all other sensations manifesting from the body. Might not be the strongest or the clearest for some, but it is there. And that's what we're honing our skill of concentration, trust. We want to develop an understanding of an inner science, which enables you to be able to say, yes, this is a sensation which is promoting and developing my meditation. This manifestation is enabled through often just a little bit of a lengthening of the vertebrae. And notice how everything settles into the space which is provided through that lengthening. We put absolute effort towards connecting to that space felt within the length between the vertebrae. This absolute effort is met with an absolute ease, which means a non-trying coming from this body. The simple act of relaxing in this posture while breathing, while engaging concentration into that space you see there from the body, naturally develops a meditation. No trying needed. The effort is in the ability to observe that space of comfort, the meditative posture, so perfectly placed. Absolutely meaningful to you, for you, and nobody else. Be aware as you sit if a distracting mind begins to develop more strength. Be aware of that. And rest with clearer conviction on the simple technique of comfort. How does one find comfort with that distraction? How does one accept that it is occurring while not giving energy towards that distraction? This is what we are cultivating. And find that within the embodiment of your meditation. letting go of all action and developing this concentration through the avenue of sensation within body. No need for the mind to do anything. Except for keenly follow the instruction of this body which is deepening in comfort. When we ask the body to relax or become comfortable, what is happening? At that moment when there's that engagement of shift, we want to be right there with our awareness. And let the body do the talking. Find the appropriate response to any activity found within the mind from the perspective of the body, the embodiment of what you wish to manifest as an experience for your meditation. Sit in that posture, designed to express greater depths of comfort. Let's now bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, bring your gaze into the space just there in front of you. Maintaining a soft intensity. We only want to identify with the quality of space itself, which is void of thought. Starting now. Keeping the eyes closed, soften the gaze. And very gently allow the eyes to open. And so what occurred for you there during that time within your seated meditation? Were you able to simply observe the experience? Were you able to respond in an appropriate way when necessary in order to retain a quality of comfort that's being manifested from the body? Were you able to recognize when that response then became a reaction and you followed that particular thought or that story? Were we able to notice a hesitation towards grounding into a single piece of instruction? Did the quality of mind increase in activity or decrease in activity? We want to get to a place where the dictation is not coming from the expression of mind and thought, but this dictation is coming from the experiencer of your physical body, so that then we can truly educate the mind how to relax. Any questions?
A lot about how the body teaches the mind relaxation. Is there anything that the mind can in turn teach to the body?
Concentration.
What does concentration in the body
Concentration in the
come
body.
through as?
Concentration in the body, meaning that we enable ourselves to be able to see the experience which is occurring within the body. So in a sense, that is a form of concentration. The mind itself uses its thought and content oftentimes to teach the experiencer of the mind how to prioritize what is really important and what can be let go of. The mind which has been left to its own device or taught in a very specific way may have a little bit of challenge around choosing what is the focal point of concentration. So therefore the busy mind and the sensations and experiences of not being able to slow the mind down or having no control over the experiences that the mind produces is in a sense a very fast and furious development. And it ideally is put into a bit of a pressured situation. We want that little bit of pressure. We don't want to shy away from the pressure. We want to actually go into the pressure. Because what the pressure is producing is it's narrowing down for us naturally the choices that we have to make. And that's why discipline is such a huge part of the practice of meditation. So this pressure that we're inducing can also be called a discipline. So if we narrow down the choices and we have no way to go but that one direction, and that one direction is anchored through an already existing base that we've developed, which is relaxation. So this relaxation is then giving a developmental step to the experience of mind, so that then as the mind is working with how to isolate and concentrate itself, it then in turn enables the body to enjoy the perspective of magnetism which mind produces. So the magnetism itself is what is engaging a thought experience or an emotion development. And that magnetism can then be applied on an increasingly more subtle level within the exact same space that relaxation resides. Does that make sense? So from this development, this deep well of relaxation, we're able to feel the magnetism experience of the mind, and then the two work together in order to give the weightedness that the mind needs in order to successfully ground into the meditative state. So this is absolute effort needed in order to achieve that concentration, attention, relaxation, but at the same time a complete letting go and a reliance on a natural intelligence which exists there. So I can sit here and say that there's a natural intelligence that exists within you that will teach you how to meditate. And there's no way that you could responsibly believe me other than if you go and do it yourself and see if there's any truth. So the way that I teach is through simple technique of one pointed concentration. So today we're talking about comfort from the physical body, and then that would be it. And that's the narrowing down of the scope and only giving one avenue to work with. So it's not the endless dimensions of how something could be experienced. It's just simply through one avenue. So as the choice is narrow, then there's less anxiousness that will manifest as to, well, I don't know what to do next or how to do this. And as you go into that single piece of technique, the manifestation of this intelligence that we're talking about will, in fact, be self-induced. The simple act of sitting and breathing will actually create a response coming from the endocrine system, the hormones, the nervous system, void. So it does not matter what the mind produces for you as a thought. That becomes secondary, tertiary even. What is primary is the fact that the physical body is going through changes. So this physical thing is going through a transformation. That then the mind itself, as a thought and a stability and the ideal vision of what meditation is like, will just catch up to its base foundation. It's so worth it to really understand this particular step and then treat each step and stage of your meditation technique in the same way. Because what we're really looking at is, what do I need to do in order to find greater comfort within my body? So if I ask myself that question, then I most definitely get an answer. But then the real art is the ability to act on that single piece, that single answer, to act on that. So that then the body gets what it needs so it sits more comfortably. But that goes all the way through, increasing in subtlety. What do I need in order to achieve this, this, this? So for some of us, the body has to open. Well, how? Ask how, well, what part of the body needs to open? Of course, you have so many tools here. You have the yoga center close to you. You have all kinds of resources. But the starting point, ideally, is you asking what you need. And then developing the mechanism and then the tool set in order to achieve that on your own. So that tool set comes in many different ways, usually education. And as we do that, we see life just cleaning up ever so nicely. And all of these blockages that are sometimes placed within the free flowing of life, promoted and sometimes even policed by the experience of the mind, is then lifted. And everything begins to flow again. But it's these simple decisions that we make within the meditative time, but also in every other moment. It's those little decisions which we barely even catch sometimes because it's so second nature. But we are slowing that down and catching them, catching them, catching them, catching them. Any other questions?
Outside of your meditation time, like just in your day-to-day, is there, you kind of started to talk about this, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you can apply the same techniques in those moments, especially like during the busyness kind of of life.
That's a really good question. And the answer starts with, what is it that then you do in your technical meditation to induce this letting go or promote the relaxation or enable you to simply observe, but from the perspective of your body. So what does your body do? What's the exact posture that your body takes when you're relaxed, when you're comfortable, when you're able to respond? And we want to notice that right away and take that position physically, so to help promote the steady flow and safe dance through the busyness. But that's the best place to start, because like we've been developing, everything will then follow that lead, coming from the most tangible experience that you have. So then we're getting a huge leg up in the ability to work with thought and emotion right as they're manifesting. So they're very small, they're not yet big in the mind's eye. They're very small, and then you can ask them to be quiet or don't need to go that way, and then it becomes very second nature over time. But if we get that physical experience involved into it, it is promoting the long-lasting sensations that the hormone excretion enables. So we want this muscle memory, this body memory, to keep triggering the mind again and again and again through its long-lasting influence. Does that make sense? You always know when you're sitting in your favorite chair because you feel like this. So likewise, we always know when we're in our favorite space because we stand like this, or we walk like this, or we talk like this, or we smile like this. It's always the same. And then it will develop. Does that make sense? So taking it way back to the beginning, and then inch your way deeper into the more subtle expressions of breath, mind, and then beyond that into the dynamic experience of stillness, but always returning back to it. And ideally not letting any one of those little pieces get away on you, so that then your mind reels in a direction. This is that sweet, sweet, soft, but incredibly strong and pointed discipline. There's only one direction, is there not? Every time we go around, we look all these different places, and we always come back to, no, this is where I was supposed to be going. Then we go around, no, this is where I was supposed to be going. And if we stay with where we're supposed to be going long enough, then it starts to evolve. And then again, we spider out. So we want to eliminate that spidering out and just bring it back to that focal point. Easy. So easy. Thank you.
Yoga can be spoken about cerebrally and mundanely, as in the conceptual nature of pursuing higher consciousness, but then also the explanation of your body as something that is gross, moving in reality, and then also the business of yoga, which is facilitating a yoga class, and like creating an atmosphere that had come from like interest in interior design, lighting as well. So how do you speak about yoga to somebody that is only interested in the cerebral quality when the way that they got to thinking cerebrally was through the mundane program that like the mundaneness was able to bring them to?
Well, I believe strongly, ideally, to meet people where they're at when it comes to the explanations of what yoga is, or even just the discussion of what yoga is. And then ideally, through the maturity of a conversation, each individual gets to express their viewpoint. And then it will manifest as a maturing of conversation, and maybe some of those views that you had will then be imparted, and then that person would glean onto a piece of it and maybe start to develop it. So in short, the best way to broadcast your understanding of the practice is just to be it and live it. This is the best way, most definitely. And then that just naturally starts to express from your language or your actions. Because the transitions, people find their definition of what yoga is through their own experience. And then coming into a setting like this, well, an individual is usually really primed and ready to go deeper with their knowledge. They're seeking out, well, what is a new explanation, or how do I deepen my understanding, or is this right? They need a sounding board. So in a situation like this, it's a little bit different. So usually one can share their views a little bit more clearly, and it's understood that there's an instruction base. But if someone is not seeking that instruction, then there's no need to force that. Because both mundane and the body and that of spiritual development are both one and the same. They actually need each other to exist, especially in this age. Like, speaking of creating spaces, we create space through lighting and through decor in order to stimulate the mind and the body to do specific things, in order to allow someone to naturally come to a place of realizing. Because this is the thing with all the yoga and meditation, is that it's an internal pursuit, not so much an external pursuit. The external pursuit is the byproduct, ideally, of the internal experiences that one is having, those attainments, those levels of realization from the inside. And because of its subtlety, it's also quite challenging and involved to teach. Because it's up to you as the individual to say, yes, I'm going to take on this one simple technique, for instance, which is comfort, and not deviate from it. But each time one deviates from it and then allows it to happen, there's no way of saying, oh, you need to pull back, per se, or you need to go this way. It's all reliant on you as this individual. And that's what makes it so special and so profound, is that you as the individual, you are actually attaining that. And that's what makes the instruction so constructive, because it's the simplicity of the instruction is such a way that you can then create the calculation that fits best for you at your particular level of understanding. So the efforts towards the full realization of it is based upon your ability to relate to all the parts that make up who you are on the inside, meaning the manifestation of mind, the intellect, and the intelligence, all of those parts. Very fine movements of position. So we start with the position of the body that we say is ideal, but then there's also a position of the breath that is ideal for relaxation, for comfort, for meditation, for clarity, for responding rather than reacting, all these things. There's also that same posture of mind. So we want the three to just sit like blueprints, one upon the next, and become so second nature like that you don't even try. So that it's not convoluted in any way. It's just simply clear. And that's also how we know where we're at, because we can't really hide that. We cannot really pretend our way through it. It's just something that naturally is. That's why I often say that all of us, we're in the perfect position, because when you close your eyes, that's exactly where you're at. So if you say, wow, this is actually ridiculous, when I close my eyes, I don't even want to keep them closed, they're so busy, that's the truth. But that truth is so incredibly malleable that it can shift in an instant under the right conditions. And that's what we're creating, is the right conditions. Again and again and again and again and again, until we just can leave it, because it's maintaining itself. So what are these right conditions for you? And we want to actively go in there and achieve that. What is the right condition for you? So is your environment externally conducive to that environment internally? And is that internal environment conducive to the external environment? And can the two coexist. That's why compassion is such an important part of developing meditation. Because the moment we start to get really frustrated with ourselves is the moment that we're really seeing where it is that we have to apply ourselves within the sweetness and kind qualities of a meditation. And at that same time, we cannot induce that either. We just have to allow ourselves to be the way that we are. So if you're feeling angry, just let it out. If you're feeling sad, let it out. If you're feeling frustrated, let it out. But let's not project. Right? That's the difference. So we don't want to project it. We want that mind to manifest it fully. Full blast, so that then it's done. Again, this is why it's nice to induce things. Putting a little bit of pressure on yourself through discipline. So if we say, I'm going to remove chocolate, for instance, out of your diet, and there's all kinds of emotion and thought and comfort and lack thereof comfort if you don't have it, then all of that comes to the surface. But if you maintain that denying and you keep a technique close to you, then it just all washes away. It just simply does. And that pressure can become increasingly more austere depending on who it is that is working with it. Maybe the easiest is to choose a comfortable meditative seat and then stay there, do not move. No matter what. If you beg yourself to move, but you know that you're safe, you just stay. No need to move. Why do you want to move? There's maybe a list very long as to why. But there's no need to move, especially because you've already made the decision. And then just watch what happens when you say no. All this acting out. And that's what I want. That's what I want. I want to see that come out. And then what's left behind. So it might take you a day to achieve it. It might take you a week. It might take you a month. It might take you even a little bit longer. It doesn't even matter. Because meditation, there's no end objective of a goal per se, or a timeline of a goal. There's an achievement point, but there's no real timeline. It could take as long as it needs to. So then when we say it could take you 2 years to find true comfort, and maybe you're of the mind quality that says, that's ridiculous. I want to do a weekend course and just get it. It's very challenging like that. But if we can commit to, this is a lifelong practice that I have in front of me that I want to commit to, then that little step, if it takes 2 years, is solid. But what is happening is we keep reaching towards the biggest picture often within the meditation, and then it gets so broad, the topic, that then we get lost in all of its translation and explanation and even understanding. So my recommendation, even for someone who's been meditating for 30 years, scale it back. You always must start from the very beginning and then start to inch yourself deeper until this is so solid that it just happens quickly. Body, breath, mind, so quick. You have it. And then you move on to what is the fresh aspect of your meditation that you're working on, which is the aspect of yourself that you're working on, the psychology of yourself that you're working on. This is the thing. Meditation is the sounding board that's showing you, this is my psychology in its purest, in its most truthful state. And then when we get to that place, we say, okay, I'm truthful with myself. This is how I am, and now these are the tools that I'm using in order to then work with it. Then this is real growth, self-development, and ultimately realization as to why and how it all works. So you're following right in tow and completely in alignment with these ancient traditions. But it's based upon that one little part inside that is able to click and do that little piece. Any other questions?
You speak of following the